football's neck, really. And even winning at Murrayfield in 2000 didn't really help, because Leeds were playing particularly poorly at that time, so we were expected to win handsomely, and we scraped through in that game, really. But the big thing for me, and I'm sorry, Mark, this is going to be painful, possibly. But,
no, don't worry about it. Inflict some pain.
We've got to rub these things in occasionally. It's 2001 Grand Final for me.
Was that the Michael Withers one?
That's the Withers final for me. Yeah.
I was heartbroken. I think that was the first season I'd had a season ticket of my own at Wigan. I shared one with my brother for a couple of years before that, and if they'd have been looking for young male fans with tears in their eyes to take the mick out of on Sky, I'd have been one of them that night. But anyway, go ahead.
It was just one of those games. I mean, as I said, because pretty early in the year we'd played St Helens in the Challenge Cup final down at Twickenham, and it was just, I don't know if you remember that game, but it was the worst game I've ever been to in terms of final. It was chucking it down, and basically St Helens kicked us to death, and we played absolutely terrible in that game. And I kind of came out of there thinking, we are never going to win a big final. It never felt like it was going to happen for us. But everything all the stars seemed to align in that game. I've watched that game back many times, and the quality of the rugby we played in that game stands up against anything that I think we've ever played, ever. And it probably stands up as one of the most comprehensive kind of performances in 40 minutes of a final. Just in terms of Wigan were a decent side. You look at who they had on that field.
It was Jason Robinson's farewell game, wasn't it?
Yeah,
he was moved to fullback because Radlinski was out.
Radlinski was playing, Farrell was in, kind of big names, and we wiped the floor with you. I mean, we absolutely took you apart, and that was the kind of the zenith for me, is kind of the moment that I think. Because I remember looking at the scoreboard at half time, and I could not believe it. I was beside myself with how happy I was with how we played. So that's the moment that kind of stands out for me, really, as a kind of just a moment where actually, you know what, we've arrived and we are a kind of a top-ranking team, and all the kind of big defeats that we'd had in semi-finals against Wigan in Challenge Cup finals and stuff like that, it kind of said, you know what, we are a big side and we can kind of take you on. So that was kind of the moment that kind of stood out for me as a fan.
That's a really good one.
I've been dreamily looking off into the middle distance during that entire little bit, Alan. That was a wonderful respite from the last 5 years, mate.
Thanks for sharing. And we do hope that you'll get to enjoy that again, but maybe against a Leeds or a St Helens.
Well, I was going to say, quite frankly, this is what I'm saying. We need to be realistic. We need to. The big games for us next year are going to be against, the kind of the Oldhams and the Batleys and the Dewsburys, and that's just the way that it's going to be. And we need to be realistic about the club, but never forgetting that time. I mean, it's a slight aside. Is that the kind of my kind of feeling now is that the Bulls name should kind of take a rest. I'm kind of thinking, I know you've had debates on the pod about, Hunsworth removing the Hawks name and all that kind of stuff. I'm kind of the mind that as a community small club, I'd like us to become Northern again or something.
Well, get ready for a conversation on this podcast about that too.
I think it's just you and me versus the world on that, Al, but
that's fine, but
there's a lot of other Bradford fans who think that. I'm not necessarily in that boat, but I'm not a Bradford fan.
If not, I'll go back to 1863 and we'll be Bradford FC again and really go back to our roots.
Yeah, I only suggest it, and I'm not saying the brand's toxic or anything like that, but it kind of draws a line under there was a period of massive success, the kind of summer rugby kind of embracing and kind of approach the Bulls had. It did something for the Bradford club in '95. Now we need to do something different for Bradford now, and that is, and bringing back, call the Northern Bulls, I don't care, call us whatever you want, but at the end of the day, part of me just thinks we need a break, because there's something around the Bulls brand that kind of is tainted by being liquidated. It just feels like it's kind of...
It's a natural stopping off point, isn't it, for that kind of period of history in Bradford Rugby League. And I tend to agree with you. I think a new name and a new chapter in Bradford Rugby League generally is probably a good starting point. Listen, Al, we really appreciate you coming on, mate. And like I said to you before we started the interview, the contributions that you and your lovely wife make to the podcast are a big and important part of what we do. So we're very grateful. And like I was saying to the last interview, if we win a grand final in 10 years' time, we'll get you back on to do that end of season show as well. Does that sound all right by you?
That sounds fine by me. Yeah, absolutely.
Magic. Well, thanks very much indeed, Al. Pleasure to have you on.
No, you're welcome. All right, see you soon. Cheers, mate.
We've had Vicky McQueen as well, who's been a long-term listener to the podcast for one of the early days.
Very early days, yeah.
We've heard from her less and less over the sort of Bulls decline time. One
can hardly blame her.
She makes valid contributions. We did meet her as well at a summer bash, didn't we?
Yes, so apologies for that, Vicky. We were all pretty pissed at that point.
Vicky didn't want to get on the line, but she did have some really good views that we wanted to sort of cover off. Really. Yeah. So she sent us a message that said, "Hi Tom and Mark, it's not very often I get in contact with you, so here's a little bit about me. I've been following the Bulls from early 2000s. A family friend gave my dad some free tickets. We went to a game, can't remember who we were playing, but we were hooked. The next season we went to a few more games, and soon after that I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my Sunday afternoons. I listen to the podcast on my walk to work, and I'm looking forward to listening to you both again next season. I've seen a lot of rugby league fans expressing their opinions on the latest Bulls saga over the last couple of days. However, I've found it quite difficult to put how I'm feeling into sentences, and I'm pretty sure the other half is fed up of my mutterings and ramblings on about the Bulls. So here goes." I'll preface the next bit. Vicky got in touch with us sort of during the week, just before some of the departures were announced, but after the liquidation was announced. Mm-hmm. So Vicky goes on to say, "The liquidation was not a huge surprise, although there had been some positive murmurings during the administration discussions. If there's anything the last few years have taught me, it's always to be a little pessimistic when it comes to anything Bradford Bulls related. It makes me so angry that we are in this situation again. Bradford have a long history of producing potential world-class players and then just letting them go. The England pack of the Four Nations was made up of a number of ex-Bulls players. The Burgess brothers, Whitehead and Bateman. Just when you think the Bulls could have been... Just think where the Bulls could have been if they'd had their shit together and been able to keep hold of some of our homegrown talent. That is one of the most upsetting things about the liquidation and numerous administrations. The fact that we haven't been able to retain our talent. This week has already seen the departures of Alex Mellor and Tom Alberson, and no doubt a number of other players will be set to announce departures over the next few days. I don't blame them. If there's a chance to go and work for someone that you don't have to worry about being paid every month, you jump at the opportunity. But when Adam O'Brien announces he's leaving, I just might cry." I hope you're okay, Vicky. I don't know what to say. I forgot that bit was in there. I can see why the RFL have said a new Bradford club can take our place in the Championship, because League One teams won't have had enough time to prepare to take on the rest of the Championship in 4 weeks. Plus season tickets and summer bash tickets have been sold on the idea that Bradford would be there. But will we be ready? With all these players leaving, will we even have enough players to put out a squad in the Championship? A decimated makeshift squad on minus 12 points deduction is almost destined to be relegated to League One at the end of the year. So why not put us out of our misery and let us start at the bottom like Toronto or Toulouse have done? A number of Bradford fans also need to forget this idea that Bradford should be or deserve to be in Super League. Super League need Bradford, blah blah blah. Bradford have not been a Super League club for a number of years. It's unlikely that we will be a Super League club at any point in the near future. We are the Leeds United of Rugby League. We might have a following similar to that of a Super League team, but we are most definitely not a Super League team. We're barely even a Championship team at the moment. I'm hoping that there's some positive news over the next few weeks, and I have a team to go and watch next season. Keep up the good work, lads."
Lovely, thank you, Vicky. That's actually basically put into words how I feel about a large part of the situation. So, and I'm sure it's vocalised a lot of what other Bradford fans are feeling as well. So we really appreciate you getting in touch, Vicky. Thank you very much.
We also got one in from Martin Haight, who I gathered was a Bradford fan. Punchier, but certainly very pertinent, I think. He said, just hope that no one who was involved in allowing this once great club to flounder is allowed anywhere near any other incarnation of it. I think that is maybe a point that's not been said enough. But when you look through that timeline that we threw up at the start of the show, there's so many times where you're seeing the same names coming into the stories over the years, and it's almost like, when's someone going to tell those guys they're not cut out for it, they're not fit for purpose?
Well, a lot of these guys have passed a fit and proper person's test. So, whilst I'm not laying the blame at the RFL's door in any way, I would go so far as to say that they perhaps need to, and I'm sure they recognise the need to have a more rigorous vetting process for any rugby club, not just the Bulls.
Vicky touched on the Championship and League One stuff, which obviously is going to dominate the feedback we got from the views from the wider fan bases. So we'll cover that off after this when we get into those fan views.
Okay, so we're nothing if not a democracy at the Super League pod, and everybody gets a right of reply. There's been a lot of Bulls fans and Bulls talk. Obviously, it's an emotive subject, the way that the Bulls have folded and the way that that's been handled by the club and by the RFL. So we put it out there for other listeners to get in touch via Twitter and Facebook and email. And of course, as we've come to expect from the Super League pod listenership, you haven't let us down, guys and girls. So thank you very much. We'll start with Rich Wilkinson, who gets in touch. He says, "Now then, lads, my 2 cents is that as a diehard Rhino, there is always a cheap laugh to be had at the Bulls amongst Rhinos over a pint. But the reality is that we need the Bulls and we need them to be strong. For Super League not to continue to drop in quality and appeal, we need the Bulls to bring to the competition what they did in the early 2000s. The rebuilding of the club has failed several times. Perhaps this epic purge is the only way to work towards a sustainable future. I hope this doesn't spell the end of the Bulls, like other legacy clubs have fallen by the wayside, never to return to the top flight. Unfortunately, with the general incompetence of the RFL, this could happen. I'm not a person who constantly puts the boot into Big Nige and co, but as I live here in Australia and see how the game can be run, the RFL seem really clueless and amateur. I recognise there is significantly more money in the NRL, but I feel there is enough money within the RFL and Super League to have strong leadership driving our sport forward. For the governing body to not step in and get a key club like Bradford Bulls properly fixed up years ago is an epic failing of the sport in the UK."
We moved from one Leeds fan to another then. John Padgett got in touch. He said, "As a Leeds fan, I'm heartbroken at the demise of Bradford. Our teams may be traditional rivals, but I wouldn't wish this on any club. I hope that whoever runs a Bradford club does so to a level that the Bradford fans deserve, and that these fans gather behind the new club to give it their full support."
David Knight, you might know him as DG Knight of the Twitters. He got in touch and said, "Trying to be as optimistic as possible, I hope the new Bradford club gets rebuilt from a solid foundation and returns to be a major force in Super League. Better than another mismanaged rescue. Best wishes to all the long-suffering Bulls fans, especially Tom." Oh, thank you, Dave.
Ian Gatwood, he got in touch. He said, "As a London fan and part of the RL family, I'm gutted for everyone at the club. I do think there'll be a club ready, though, in some form or fashion at the start of the season." He then came back to us with a bit more, which is good. "I think there will be a Bradford side line up in the first match in 4 weeks' time, and it wouldn't surprise me if it is actually a half-decent squad. The recent closing of the club has really come about through years of mismanagement, not just by Mark Green, but a few others before him. And as a London fan and a rugby league fan, I'm sad that it came to this. But perhaps it had to come so that a new club can be much better run. The fans might not agree, but look at London. Go back, start again. And now it's in a much healthier position on and off the pitch with and with a very much more realistic chance of a return to Super League in 2018.
Thank you, Ian. Lee Wheeler, he got in touch as well. Cheers, Lee, saying, such a massive shame that years of mismanagement has led Bradford to this point. I, like everyone, want to see rugby league remain in Bradford, but for me, that should